This is Transit Unplugged, and I'm your host, Paul Comfort. Each year, the American Public Transportation Association recognizes one large public transit system, which provides 20 million or more annual passenger trips, with their Outstanding Public Transportation System Achievement Award. This year, it's Vancouver's TransLink. For the last 3 years, Vancouver's TransLink has led the United States and Canada in ridership growth. Between 2016 and 2018, TransLink's ridership grew by 18%, far outpacing growth in local population and employment. During a time of rapid and dramatic change in the transportation sector, TransLink has become a world-leading example of how transit can grow and help an entire region become more livable, more sustainable, and more innovative. Not only that, TransLink has become an example to cities around the world of how a transit authority can not just survive, but can become more trusted, more popular, and yes, even cool. And now they're embarking on a $9 billion plan to improve transit and transportation in the region, including 2 rapid transit projects, expansions to bus and their SkyTrain service, investments in major infrastructure upgrades, and improvement in service reliability. In addition, they've reached an all-time high in customer satisfaction and have been recognized as the fastest rising brand in British Columbia and led the way with innovations in access, transit, marketing, and technology. On this edition of Transit Unplugged, I'm excited to interview Kevin Desmond, the CEO of TransLink, and I interviewed him in his office the week it was announced that he won this important APTA award. Stay tuned, buckle up, and get ready for a great round-the-world tour of how TransLink has become North America's top major transit system for 2019.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
I'm Paul Comfort. Welcome to Transit Unplugged, the worldwide phenomenon which is finding ways to tell you interesting stories about public transit. And today we're excited to be in the top transit system in North America, according to the American Public Transportation Association, who just awarded TransLink here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, their award for the top major transit system in North America. And I'm sitting with the CEO, Kevin Desmond. Kevin, thanks for having us in today.
Thanks, Paul. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Last night we were together at an event, which is you're looking to the future, which I think is awesome. Why don't you, well, just kick off with that. Tell us about what was that event about and why are you trying to get the public so involved in your transit system?
Well, quickly by way of sort of maybe looking backwards, I've been in this industry since the early 1990s, starting in New York. And here we are near the end of this particular second decade of this century. This is the most exciting time to be in our business because so many things have already changed very quickly and are on the cusp of changing going forward. The next decade, the decade of the 2020s, are liable to see massive disruptive change in our industry. Even the things that have been happening over the few short years, I think, are just the tip of the iceberg of what's coming. So this forum that you're talking about, that you attended with us last night, is our way of bringing people in the community together with thought leaders to think about that future. We do not have a crystal ball here at TransLink. Of course, we're plugged in. We're seeing what's going on in the world. In some cases, we're leaders. In some cases, we're going to be last to the party, like in ride-hailing. We're the last North American city that will be getting
Uber and Lyft and those
Uber and
things,
Lyft and those guys are going to start being licensed and allowed in our region later on this year. So in one respect, maybe we were a laggard there, but then again, by some studies in the city of Vancouver, is the car share capital of the world. So we've had shared mobility for years here and shared in car-to-go kind of thing, shared cars. They have a bike share program. And we may well benefit from being the last to do ride-hail. We'll be able to learn from the mistakes or the misdirections and the negative outcomes, say, from ride-hailing. But that said, there's still so much that can change in the next decade. And I like to think of TransLink, and I think TransLink's success over the years is that we don't put our head in the sand. We know we have to change. I'm a firm believer in this industry that we're not the monopoly and love us, take us or leave us. It's no, we need to compete well, because I think of us as a consumer product like any others. You do have a choice. Many people, if not most people, they do have a choice. They don't have to take the bus. They don't have to take the train. I want them to want to take the bus and want to take the train. We have to figure out ways to attract and retain ridership. And as we're looking forward into this new mobility future, there's going to be more and more competition. So I want to get with the competition. I want to figure out how to outcompete with them. I want to figure out how to partner with them. I want to figure out maybe in some places we cede some of our territory to some of these other new mobility options so that we can even be stronger in the things that we are doing. And we do benefit. We've had by far the fastest growing ridership over the last number of years in North America, and there's a reason for that. We actually have a good foundation transit system here with really, really strong land use policies that support the kind of demand for our system. So, long-winded way of saying that's what that forum was about. It's
the future of mobility, right?
The future of mobility. It's the third of what will be, I would hope, numerous forums going forward. So we can think about our role in that world in the next decade and how we can get the best out of our tax dollars and get the best results for the people of this region.
It was a great turnout. Hundreds of people packed the room. It shows the level of interest that you've got in your citizenry in supporting public transit, public mobility. One of the other statistics, which you just mentioned, is that between 2016 and 18, your ridership grew by 18%. During your reign here, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about the service you provide and how you're getting people so interested in taking it.
Not to brag, it's up through 6 months this year, still about 4.3%. So
beautiful.
The wave keeps going.
Yeah.
It starts with the fundamentals, and I just mentioned land use planning. One of the things...
And that's your background, right? Planning.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Started out in planning at New York City Transit. Yeah. One of the reasons why we have such a well-used transit system with very good transit effectiveness indicators, rides per hour, rides per trip, rides per capita, is kind of the hallmark of this region that goes back really to the 1970s, is a very, very strong commitment to sustainable land use policies where the region adopted approaches to densifying around centers, to organizing activity centers that could then be well served by public transportation. We all know in our industry, one of the challenges with our industry, if you've got very, very dispersed land use patterns, it's very, very hard to serve that effectively in public transportation. You're not going to get the effectiveness, which means you're not going to get good cost effectiveness, which just makes it a lot harder to develop a good system. Here we have some urban sprawl, we have some suburban areas, but we also have major nodes of activity, whether it's employment activity or housing activity, which then we can organize around. And TransLink and our predecessor organizations organize the transit system around such that those two things happen in concert pretty well, and differently than most urban areas in North America, from my estimation. And it's built the success of the system, number one. So you have your starting point's very strong. Then if we can improve the customer experience and really focus on the customer. So since I've been here for a little over 3 years, when they hired me, they said, we want you to focus on the customer. That's something that TransLink had lost. We're focusing on the customer. We are doing, in many respects, the little things that can matter, and we're doing the big things. We have a huge, unprecedented transit expansion plan underway. It started in late 2016. We opened our most recent 11-kilometer extension to our automated SkyTrain system, and ever since, we've been rolling out improvements on SkyTrain, on our buses, on our paratransit, and our C-Bus, water ferry. So we're adding service, we're adding capacity, we're reaching out to new portions of the territory, and we're finding ways to improve the customer experience. And that's resulted, I think, in a lot more confidence in our system, and that's driving more people to our service.
That's great. So talk about the scope of what you do, the service area, number of vehicles. Just give us kind of because you're covering a lot of territory, over 1,000 miles, right?
Yeah, we have, I forget the per square, the square kilometers.
1,118 square miles.
Thank you, Paul.
In American lingo.
Yes. So we actually have the largest territory for a single transit agency in Canada.
Wow.
I suppose BC Transit would beat us because they cover the whole province, but that's just a series of largely small communities in British Columbia. So we've got the largest regional territory for a single agency. We're fortunate when visionaries over 20 years ago created the concept of TransLink, and it went with that ethic about the land use planning. Let's create an organization who's got the singular scope for providing public transportation, for being the go-to organization for transportation planning in the region, and having some responsibilities for some roads and bridges. So we've got a very broad scope. We are the only public transportation provider. We don't then have to negotiate, as we heard last night in one of the other forums. We don't have to negotiate with other agencies. Even in my previous job at King County Metro, we were the largest transit system in the state of Washington, serving King County and the Seattle region. But we also had to work with the regional transit agency, Sound Transit, our partners, who are a 3-county agency, and we had to work with our fellow county agencies and to the south and to the north and to the west. San Francisco has 23 transit agencies that their metropolitan planning organization tries to knit together. And it's very complicated. Here we're a unitary organization, so we can plan out and scope out our system much more logically. We have one fare system through our Compass system. So we provide about 73 kilometers of automated SkyTrain.
Okay.
We have.
Now, why is it called SkyTrain? Is it because a lot of it is elevated, or?
Well, that's a great question. I wasn't here when it was. So it was created. The first SkyTrain was developed and opened for the Expo in 1986.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was the starter line, and SkyTrain came out of that.
Great moniker.
And I imagine it was because it was all elevated. I will say this, especially on a beautiful day like today. This is, as people who come to Vancouver know, particularly when the weather is good, it's an incredibly beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see the region for the price of one fare, just ride SkyTrain, because it's all elevated, and the views of our region from lots of different portions of Sky, it's a great tourist attraction. It's just I
just rode it here. It's amazing.
It's you look south across to the San Juan Islands in the state of Washington and Mount Baker in the state of Washington, all the way to the northern mountains here, and SkyTrain gets all those views. So we've got 73 kilometers of automated SkyTrain.
Okay.
We have a huge bus network that serves all of the communities. We have, in effect, 23 municipalities that we serve every year. Roughly 2/3, a little less than 2/3 of our ridership is actually bus. Most of the rest is SkyTrain. We have our C-Bus. C-Bus is 31 years old now, I believe, that connects downtown Vancouver to the North Shore. Okay. It's a much beloved, very, very reliable. It's a fantastic service. Again, it's another really, really inexpensive tourist ride. And, ridership on Friday nights, for example, is booming because there's lots of activity on the North Shore in the city of North Vancouver. They have a market, a farmer's market, and entertainment out there. And we have just standing room only virtually on our C-Bus on Friday nights. It's just people going back and forth using transit. We have a commuter rail system that takes us up the Fraser River Valley. We have, like any U.S. system, very large paratransit network as well.
That contracted out?
The paratransit is contracted out, yes.
The rest of it, do you operate yourself with your employees?
No, not quite. The West Coast Express is contracted.
Okay.
And one of our SkyTrain lines, the Canada line, which was opened right before the Winter Olympics in Vancouver, was the first in North America P3, full P3 rapid transit line. So it is a 30-year concession. Okay. It was built and operated with considerable private dollars. So it was kind of a good model for P3s. It shows a lot of the good things about P3s, and it points out some of the perhaps less desirable aspects of P3s as well. So, but it was the first ever, and I think it was a great opportunity to kind of learn how to do it and how do you improve P3 type contracts going forward.
And passenger counts, you have over 1 million people a day trips on your service, right?
As of June, we had 1.47 million daily riders on the system. Very, for a region of just about 2.5 million people, that's a lot. That's pretty good.
Wow.
And that's boardings.
More than half your people, more than half the...
Well, it's probably, we counted, it's over 500,000 individual human beings who take, more than 2 trips a day. We have a lot of intermodal. So one of the really good things about the way the system has been built is SkyTrain is this sort of rapid transit, high-capacity spine. So a considerable portion of our bus network is oriented to get people seamlessly from bus to rail and then to where they're going. So there's a lot of transferring going on. We have our Compass card, smart card system that enables that seamless interaction between different modes. So last year we had record ridership. We have year after year record ridership, 437 million boardings.
That is something.
Which, far, I think we're something like the 23rd largest metropolitan region in North America with the 8th highest ridership.
Wow.
In North America. So we like to say we punch well above our weight from that standpoint.
Budget, employees, that kind of stuff?
7,800 employees with a large budget. Operating capital. The big thing we've been working on since I've been here is what we call the mayor's vision. It's a transit expansion plan. We're now in the second of what had been planned to be 3 phases, and through 2 phases, it's $9 billion in investments. That will be building us a 6-kilometer Broadway subway line that should open in late 2025. Just today, we went through some policy work with our policy body to take the next step towards approval of a further SkyTrain expansion that could eventually be 16 kilometers down to the city of Langley through the city of Surrey. The largest ever procurement of rail cars so that we can drastically expand the capacity of SkyTrain. We should be going to market this summer for more automated rail cars. So big capital dollars to expand the system and big operating dollars to expand capacity now. So that focus naturally has been on the bus system. That's where that's been getting most of the operating resources. To the extent to which we had some fleet that we could deploy on SkyTrain, we've been able to increase capacity there. So we're in the midst of, we're about halfway through delivery, a little less than halfway through delivery of some new Bombardier cars for our Expo Millennium line. And the first of our new Canada line cars just arrived, or is being shipped from South Korea to here as we speak. It's someplace in the middle of the Pacific as we speak.
You've been doing some pretty innovative things. Tell us about the wearable and the tap and go and those kind of things.
So when TransLink designed its smart card contactless system a number of years ago, we, among other things, we benefited from the state of the technology at that time, such that when we wanted to, we could enable the ability to contactlessly tap a chip-enabled credit card or an NFC phone with a wallet on your phone. So we worked on that last year with our vendor, and in late May last year, we turned that on. We called it Tap to Pay. I think we're getting about 12,000 transactions a day now on average, people using their credit cards or their mobile wallets. It's not meant to replace the Compass card at this point in time, but it's a really nice adjunct. If you are an irregular rider, if you're a visitor to town, you're coming in from the airport, instead of fumbling around on the ticket vending machine. Have you ever met a ticket vending machine that was intuitive and easy to use? I haven't anywhere in the world. They're cumbersome. Now you don't have to think. You sort of tap and go. If you're going down to a hockey game or to an event at BC Place, you don't have a Compass card, just tap to go. You don't have to wait online. I mean, oftentimes after big events, there are huge lines of people buying tickets at the vending machines. Don't have to do that now. So we launched that last year, and it's kind of an interesting story I won't fully get into, but we ended up making a relationship with Seth Rogen, who then became a little bit of the voice.
About that.
Well,
because you got a lot of press on that this year.
I don't want to go into how that started because it was a little unfortunate with another well-known celebrity. I don't want to go through that in your podcast. You can report on that afterwards. But as a result of that, Seth Rogen, who grew up in Vancouver and grew up using the transit system and still lives here in Vancouver and still uses our system, said, hey, he contacted our social media guy. How can I help? And it's like, wow, way cool. And our social media guy, through email and texting and stuff, got a relationship going with Seth. And he ended up agreeing to do a whole series of public service announcements, courtesy types announcements in the system with a lot of fun. So anyone who knows Seth and his laugh at the end, it was fun, but at the same time, it was telling you, how can you be more courteous in the system? Got worldwide attention.
It did,
when it launched. There was other organizations, we need something like that too. And it also demonstrated that TransLink could have fun. We're not just some stodgy, stuffed up organization behind closed doors that's not accessible to the public. It's another way to demonstrate we're wide open. We can have fun too. In fact, we can poke fun at ourselves. We're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. That then came after the sort of tap to pay. And then later on last year, we introduced another product, a wearable. And I think we're the first with wearables, at least in North America. It's a wristband, basically with a chip in it.
Okay.
And we teased that out. I think it was in December that we did the wearables. We teased it out. We let people know, on, I don't know if it was a Monday or what day of the week, we're going to put some on sale. It was a limited number. I think it was 1,200 in the first run. We had people lining up at our 2 physical sales centers for hours beforehand, got a lot of media around it. They sold out within hours, and we did a second round of the sales. Are they a large portion of how people are tapping to get in this? No, but it's fun. Yeah. It drew some attention to the system, and it created a different utility. What a great thing to give your kid.
Yeah.
Instead of having a card that they're going to lose, or having a lanyard around their neck or something, here, put it on your wrist.
Yep.
And that's how you're going to get on the bus to go to school, to go to soccer practice, or whatever. Awesome. It's trying to show different ways that we can have fun in the system, that we could find new, interesting products that could hit some of the niches of our market.
Speaking of that, tell us a little about your open innovation call that you had last year, and how is that working?
Yeah, that was a first. It's all part of our what we call TransLink Tomorrow, the new mobility series that you were referring to at the beginning of the podcast was also part of that. So as we've copied and learned from other organizations, LAMTA, with Phil Washington has been very interested in unsolicited ideas and innovation. So we're trying to learn how they did it and others have done it. Let's go out to the general marketplace, to innovators, to academics, to other public sector organizations, to people who are smarter than us. And let's give them a little challenge question. Give us your ideas around that particular challenge question. Last year, it was about integrated mobility. We got over 90 proposals, and most of them were really, really cool. Many of them they didn't actually particularly address the challenge question, but they were all very interested and cool. We ended up selecting one. We're working on it now with 3 of our homegrown transportation sharing organizations, Moto Car Share, Modi Bike Share, and Evo Car Share. Okay. All 3 of those are locally grown organization, and we're trying to, it's our little foray into mobility as a service. How can we sort of join up with those shared organizations in some kind of common planning and booking platform? And we hope to have progress on that later on this year. We issued our second open innovation call in April. Okay. And I believe there are interviews going on as we speak of some of the shortlisted open innovation folks.
You've got an amazing culture here as well. I've talked to some of your employees while I've been here, and tell us about the culture, the workforce development programs you have.
Well, every organization is going to have its unique cultures for so many different ways. New York City Transit, where I started my transit career, had its particular culture. When I went to Pierce Transit, smaller organization, really good, unified culture around a fairly young organization. King County Metro Transit, where I spent 12 years as a general manager. Its culture had evolved because it started in the late 1950s, or its parent organization in the late 1950s was actually created to clean up the waterways in the Puget Sound and Lake Washington. So it had a very, very strong environmental bent. And all those years later, it was still embedded in the culture. Here, this organization was sort of cobbled together when TransLink was created. So the bus company here is 100 years old, and it started in many, many different iterations, eventually became BC Transit, but then when it was made part of TransLink in 1999, it became Coast Mountain Bus Company. So it's got a very, very long culture of its own. The Rapid Transit Company that built SkyTrain, again, it wasn't, TransLink didn't exist when SkyTrain was created. It was created on its own. It created sort of its own culture, and then TransLink came in 1999 as the corporate entity took on these two subsidiary organizations. So we have an interesting culture that's kind of different, but still unified around customer. And that's really what I like to focus on. We're all here for one reason, to provide service to a customer, whether it's our paying customer, a taxpayer, or an internal customer. I like to say everybody here works for the bus driver. So if you think about that,
the inverted pyramid, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it from that standpoint, everything I think about, what can I do as the CEO to make the bus operator's job easier, which means getting his or her coach out, making sure that vehicle's clean, making sure it gets back because it doesn't break down or something during the course of the day, making sure there's really good information at the bus stops, making sure they're empowered with information on board. So when people are asking them question, making sure that if something bad happens on the bus, security incident, that someone's there to help them and to deal with it. So we sort of think about it from that standpoint, really, really focused on the customer. And I think that generally is what this organization is about. I think we have a pretty good focus on the customer. I don't think we would have such strong ridership outcomes if we didn't have a pretty good focus on the customer. And I think, here in this region, people understand that taxpayers are paying the bill. So I think our employees understand the need for value for money. They understand that, hey, we've got to prove to taxpayers that it's worth every dime of their tax dollars.
You touched on your history a little bit. I'd like to delve into that a little bit more, your personal background. People are always interested in the CEO story. So tell us how you got here. Where'd you start? And how you lined your career here?
So I'm from New York originally, and after taking a little time off from college, I went to New York University, got a master's degree in public administration, got a job in the mayor's office of operations when Ed Koch was mayor. We didn't do political stuff. We were kind of the intersection between the agencies and the Office of Management and Budget. And within 9 months on my job, I was assigned to the Department of Transportation. So it wasn't by design. I didn't go into this with a transportation bent whatsoever. Most I knew about mass transit was a user, using the subway primarily, very, very seldom on a New York City bus. And then after a couple years there, I did 2 absolutely bizarre, fascinating years at the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, which is why I'm so fascinated by ride-hailing, because back in those days, in the 1980s, our job was to make sure that the taxi cabs didn't mess around with their meters, and we were trying to license gypsy cabs, what was called gypsy cabs back in the days, black cars for hired vehicles. And then from there, I went to New York City Transit, where I spent 5 years as Chief of Operations Planning. So it was not planned and by design that I'd go into the transit industry. But what I found working at New York City Transit was this industry is, if you're into it, is really, really different. It's fun. You're a public service / social service. You're an organization that could be focused on public policy in a lot of different ways, because so much of what we do in our industry is policy driven. Whether it's the environment, whether it's just reducing traffic, it's kind of policy driven. And I love public policy. And third, as I alluded to before, you can think of yourself as a business because you're still competing for discretionary users. Even in New York City, we're still competing for discretionary users.
Right.
In Tacoma, Washington, we were definitely competing in Seattle, we were competing for people who had a choice. And we competed pretty well in Seattle, just like here in the Vancouver region. So that's kind of what makes, I think, what jazzes me in the business, is that it's that combination of all 3 of those things that makes our industry a little bit unique, because you can exist separately in your own silo in all 3 of those worlds, or ideally all at the same time, and work on tough problems. In our Orca Lift card in Seattle, card for low-income people, as social equity has become more and more of an issue. Our political leadership pushed us a little bit into that, but once the political leadership in Seattle sort of got around that, said, this has got to be a priority. Metro, how are you going to get it done? We got it done. And, I will say, I think there were a lot of doubters at the time that didn't think we could pull off what we were asked to do, and we pulled it off really well. So, here we were innovative. We worked on an important social policy issue, and we executed operationally really well. At the end of the day, I can go home at night and saying, hey, that was really cool. We got some good stuff done, and it makes everybody proud around the organization.
So you went from New York to where?
Went from New York, moved my family to the Puget Sound and worked for Pierce Transit in Tacoma, Washington for 8 years, became the vice president of operations and development, and then 12 years as general manager of King County Metro. And I've been here since March of 2016 in British Columbia.
Am I wrong in saying these APTA awards go back several years, and so Seattle won last year, so that's probably, you probably don't want to say it yourself, but I'll say it. I say that a lot of that is probably the groundwork that you laid. So 2 years in a row, your handiwork is rising to the top, and I think we can hear today why.
Yeah, when Metro won last year, it was maybe a tad bittersweet, but I felt proud of the people down there. I felt proud of Rob Gannon, who's the general manager. And I felt proud that I was part of that because, a lot of what was there were things that were put in place. And then for us to be fortunate enough to win it this year it's a nice feather in the cap. But, at the end of the day, it's about your employees. Nobody wins this alone. Whether it was at Metro and the pushes we had from our policymakers here, a lot of this wouldn't have happened without the new funding from the federal government, the Trudeau government, to help reinvigorate a mayor's plan that just in 2015 had lost a referendum. So, there's lots of dynamics in place. And to be able to make a lot of things happen in so many different dimensions, it's hard work, it's creativity, and a little bit of luck along the way.
So let's talk about that. So we've looked at the past and the present. What are your hopes for the future? You've got this new source of funding at the federal level, and you've got a board that seems to be very supportive. What are your hopes of where you hope to take TransLink?
Well, further growth. I mean, there's a lot of latent demand here, and there's a lot of new territory we still need to plow. In our region, the south of the Fraser River, we're looking out of my office across the Fraser River now, that is the city of Surrey in just a few years is going to be the biggest city in British Columbia.
Really?
It will have a greater population than Vancouver, but it's got sparser land use. It's not as dense as Vancouver, but it's growing really fast. And our region, Vancouver, I think infamously is well known, is having some of the highest housing prices in the world, unfortunately. So the affordable housing is further and further away from jobs, which means it's getting further and further away of the core transit network, which means we have a lot of catching up to do to reach those communities. That was part of our debate today about the SkyTrain extension with our mayors. So my vision, number one, continue that expansion program as effectively and quickly as practicable. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time to build more rapid transit. It doesn't take as long to fill it in with bus. Secondly, back to the first part of the conversation, that this next decade is going to be so cool with different disruptors. And I really look forward to see how we can partner in that disruptor world. I don't want to pit a public transit agency against the ride-hailing companies. I like to think that we can figure out a way to coexist for the larger mobility good. And that's our objective at TransLink, improving overall mobility. Third is the coming of electrification of our rubber tire industry, at least. We're fortunate in British Columbia, all of our power is hydro-based power, so it's clean energy to start with. So as a starting point, electricity is always going to be clean. In other parts of North America, whether it's coal fire or natural gas, a little bit of a different calculus. But next decade is the time that we need to start just buying electric buses. We're starting a pilot with our first 4 electric buses within a month or two. And I would expect, I'd like to think by the next big round of bus replacements and expansion buses early next decade, we'll buy nothing but electric. We need a lot of money, though, for charging stations. We have the money's in place to buy the buses because they're very cost competitive. But moving quickly on the charging infrastructure is a big capital and IT project in many respects. So I think those would be the 3 big things that I'd like to think we're working on. We are about halfway through updating our 30-year transportation plan. What we like to tell the public that may sometimes be cynical about long-range planning processes. The last time this region did a big plan refresh was around 1991. Almost everything in that plan that was envisioned that plan has either been implemented or is now being implemented. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That it's playing
so it's
out.
real.
It's real.
Yeah.
So we like to tell the public, give us your thoughts now.
This is your 2050 plan, right?
The 2050 plan, we call it T2050. What are your vision? What's your dreams? What are your values? Then how do we help coalesce that into a coherent plan that then we can take to our policymakers locally in the province and the federal government to then line it up. Okay, here are the phases of how we want to get to 2050. Let's figure out how to fund it going forward. So as we complete this year and then complete the plan next year, I think it's going to be really fun to see how it shapes. I was at an event many months ago, and we were talking about the long-range plan, and an audience question said, "But Mr. Desmond, what do you think it should be?" And I said, "I don't know. I want to know. That's not for me to say. It's for you to tell me." That's what we're about here at TransLink.
What a great way to wrap it up. You're one of the leading voices in our industry, and yet you're basically saying, I really want to hear from the people we serve. That'll help inform what we do next.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.